Hi guys, how are you doing? Courtney here with Renewal Logistics. I thought I would share another little story with you about a customer that we're helping that I actually spoke with earlier this week. And I think maybe it would kind of give you a little bit of an understanding of what makes Renewal Logistics a little different than the other 3PLs that are out there. One of the things that we do for companies is we'll actually stand up temporary distribution centers for them. And in this case, we're working with an account that is, this client is an off-price seller, and they have like 500 retail stores here in the Southeast. And so they're an actual retailer rather than a wholesaler who is shipping to a retailer. And we love working with retailers just as well as we do accounts that are trying to sell into the retail system. But in this case, their needs are just a little bit different than some of the needs that I've talked to you about before. So they are actually in the middle right now of changing out their ERP, and that means their system that tracks their inventory and reconciles their inventory received against what they actually purchased and what was shipped out to their stores. They are redoing that whole system, and so they are going to have 90 days of testing and changing from one to the other. And they were very concerned from a business continuity perspective about being able to ensure that their stores never skipped a beat, that they continue to have a supply of product that reached their stores at the right cadence and with the right flow. And so they came to us to help them build a solution. And we've actually worked with them multiple times. So we've worked with them during busy seasons when they needed extra support, when their DCs were too full and they still needed to ship out more, and they couldn't receive enough product, or their DCs couldn't receive any more product, and so they needed a workaround to be able to support their DCs during an overflow season. And so we've done this process for them before at that point. They've also had times when they were adding on to their DCs and they needed to have they were doing construction in one of the major areas where a lot of their volume flowed through, and so they needed, another third party to be able to support them to take over some of that volume when their capacity was constrained. And so this is, a pretty standard thing that we do with them at this point. And because we have worked with them multiple times, we've actually been able to build some super cool tools to work with them that automate a lot of the process for them. And so just to kind of quickly explain what we do with them. Again, normally in their DC, what happens is they receive goods from their vendors. They check their goods received against the purchase orders to determine if there was any variance in terms of what was purchased versus what they actually got. And then from there, those products go into their inventory. Their inventory then makes it around to their distribution side, and then there is an allocation of product per PO for each of their 500 retail stores. That is an automated process within their ERP. They are given marching orders to their team that's on the floor, their operations team. The operations team picks and packs those orders and then ships them out to their retail stores. So they were looking for a solution that would do all of that outside of their ERP, but also still give them the data that they needed that they could plug in on the backside so that the rest of their teams could continue to operate business as usual. So it was a really interesting problem to solve. And so actually now that's exactly what we do. We've built a method of communication to where they will send us their allocations that they expect to receive from all of their different vendors. They already do a rough process plan to tell us, what they think is going to go to each retail store. We will receive the trucks of goods from their vendors. And again, this is an off-price customer, so you kind of never know what you're going to get. And a lot of times it's a very kind of a messy receiving process that we have to kind of clean up and organize for them. But we will receive the goods off the truck, sort them by SKU, sort them by PO, reconcile our PO and the actual inventory to make sure there's no variance. If there is a variance, we actually go in and we'll modify the allocations. And then from there, the product goes to the tables. And our workers will open the case, apply price labels to every single item that's in the case, and then that case will go to another station. And so if you think about it, let's say that we're working with 40 vendors for this retailer, and they have 500 stores. If we were to send one case from one retailer to every single store, there would be a lot of duplication because not every store is going to need 40 units of a certain product. Most stores, in this case, actually, they only want to have 4 to 6 items sent to each store that's the same. And if you think about it, on the off-price side, people feel like they're getting a deal, and so that scarcity of there's only 1 or 2 that are out there, it kind of brings people back constantly. So that's also part of their business plan, to not have too many units go to one particular store. So long story short, they need to have some of this product kitted, and they need to have these single SKU cases set up so that each store is actually not getting 40 units of one product. They're getting 5 or 6. And so what we do is we will actually take those single SKU cases, open those cases up, pull out 5 or 6, put them into a new box, and then have 4 or 5 other lines as well, 4 or 5 other products as well, that we will open and put into that new multi-SKU case. And then we will close that case, we will inventory what's in the case, and then we will apply a shipping label, and that case will then be shipped to the store. And so, the thing that sounds simple, but there also has to be communication back about how many units of each product actually went out to each store. And then there has to be a process of reconciling that shipping label and providing that tracking data in a digital form to the client so that they know every single store what tracking numbers are, which tracking numbers are associated with which store. So what product is each store actually going to receive. So there's a lot of reconciliation, there's a lot of data management, there's a lot of data cleansing that happens in this process, and we were actually able to create an automated solution to do this for this client rather than a manual solution. So their prior vendor had actually been manually cutting and pasting these tracking numbers into this allocation sheet and then sending it. And if you know anything about manual processes, I'm sure you'll understand when I say it's painful, number one, to have to have a person copy paste all that data. It's expensive because you have a person doing it, and it's messy. There's almost always going to be mistakes if you have humans involved. And so we were able to eliminate a lot of that. We actually created a system that used bots to be able to do a lot of the pulling of the tracking numbers into the allocation sheets for the client. So it was a really neat project. And what was the coolest, and I think the thing that really makes our company shine in this case, is that we knew this was a temporary project. Our relationship with this account we never had an expectation that it was going to be, we were doing all of their distribution and fulfillment, and that we were taking over their DCs or anything like that. We knew that this was going to be a short-term solution, but we were able to build these really cool IT tools really fast and pretty inexpensively so that, it was useful for this account for that extra spend. And then now, again, we've been able to reuse these tools multiple times because of the fact that we've worked with them and we have a long-term working relationship with them. And so it's a neat story. I think the other thing, if you were to ask me where do I think this relationship will go in another 2 to 3 years, as they continue to grow, I would be very surprised, or actually I would not be very surprised, if they decide, rather than to continue to invest in the DCs that they have, if they were to consider using us as a third-party logistics vendor, and that operates as another DC for them, like a dedicated DC just for that company. And I say that just because every time that we've worked with them, they've just talked about how stressful it normally is and how easy we make things for them and how nice it is that they don't have to worry and how seamless it seems to run, and you can just see the relief that comes off of them, which is just my favorite thing. That is truly my favorite thing. You really know you're doing a good job for your client if you see relief all over them. And so, I would think that they are probably going to want us to be able to support them more and more and more over time. And since we really intimately understand their business because of these different projects that we've done with them, and we've been able to create these really cool tools for them, I think that they feel like we would bring innovation to them that they wouldn't necessarily have to pay for within their own talent stack and their own, their own employees. And so, and that's pretty much how all of our long-standing, dedicated relationships started, on a project basis where we were solving something that they just couldn't find a solution for anywhere else, internally or externally. And then it led over time to, our top account has actually closed down 3 DCs that were in areas where they were having trouble finding labor. And now we're doing all of that work for them.